We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today, I'm going to be talking about how the watch market and watch prices are continuing to go down. That's right, the prices of some key models of watches are still going down. I made a video about 1 month ago where I talked about how Rolex prices are going to be going down, and there were some people in the comments that just said, no, it's not going to happen. The numbers, they'll never get that low. In fact, if the numbers do get that low, I'll buy all the watches at that number. And guess what, guys? Some of these watches, including the Hulk, have hit that number. So I'm going to be expecting some people to pull out the checkbook and buy the watches. That being said, I do not have these watches for sale at delraywatch.com. All of these watches I'm going to talk about are out there on the free market, on Chrono24, on eBay, on the watch collector forums. So the examples that I give you are not my prices, they're the prices of the market, and I am just observing them and keeping track of them to share with you. And I want to let you guys know, I do have another YouTube channel. I would appreciate it so much if you check it out. It's called John P, where I talk about things that happen behind the scenes at delraywatch.com, how we started Delray Watch, some business, and also just some things that pop into my head that I just kind of want to share with the world. So check it out at the end of this video as well as in the description below. It's called John P. Look forward to seeing you over there. So let's talk about it. Watch prices. Let's talk about Rolex first right away. It's what everyone's thinking about. It's what most people in the watch world either aspire to purchase and add to their collection, or what they already add to their collection before kind of delving into other brands. And we'll start with the Batman, the BLNR. This is the GMT Master, ceramic bezel, black and blue in color. This watch was so hot, and I remember when this watch was really starting to trade pre-owned maybe 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. They were going just under retail, then just above retail, and that was pretty weird for a watch, let alone a sports watch. And then as the market started building, these things just climbed in price all the way up until the end of last year, 2019 holiday season, getting into almost $16,000, $17,000, $18,000. And then they came back down to $16,000 when the Batgirl came out, and $16,000 was kind of the mark. It plateaued, and now what we have is we have some in the $11,000, and I saw one sell on a Facebook group, kind of like a pseudo dealer collector kind of group where a lot of collectors talk and chat and things. And I saw one go in the upper $10,000 range. And guys, I'm here to tell you, I think there might even be some more downward mobility in the price of the Batman. And so now is a really great time. I'm not calling the bottom here, and I'll say that much like some of the advice you'll see from people like Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway and some other money managers out there in the world and some thinkers in terms of investments, and I'm not calling watches as investments, but I think they're tied to investment markets, equity markets a lot, disposable income pretty much. You'll tell people, You'll have people that recommend never trying to guess the bottom. You don't know when it's going to happen. It can go back up, it can go down further. But if you were going to be purchasing a Batman or any of these other watches anyway, now's a great time because it's much lower. It could still go up, it could still go down. But if you were going to buy it anyway, that few $100s or maybe that $1,000 drawn out over the next 10, 20, 30 years that you wear the watch. Is it a big deal? You got the watch you love, you can forget about it. If it was on your hit list, check it off and move on. Or if it's not for you and you're not looking to purchase any of these watches, hey, I can totally understand. We're in the midst of probably a recession. So always do what is best for you. And once again, I don't have any of these watches. Rolling on to the Hulk. The Hulk is another watch someone mentioned that they would buy right away if they saw in the 12s. Here's a couple examples in the 12s. The Hulk climbed up to $16,000. I saw a couple at 18, once again in holiday season. Then they came back down to 15. There's still a lot of people with them at 15, but the Rolex Hulk, the green dial, the LV, green bezel, ceramic bezel, Submariner by Rolex. Now we're seeing examples in the 12s. I saw, once again, in some collector groups, upper 11s for people that needed to get out. Rolex Hulk for $11,000 to $12,000. A lot of people thought they'd be 24 by now. Now they're much less than half of that. Decent time to get in, or maybe a time to get out if you have one and you really didn't want to keep it. Next, we have the Rolex Daytona. Now, I focused on this one a lot in my last video about a month ago. People were saying, no, the Daytona is so hot, it's the hottest watch, it's never going to go down anymore. 1 month later, here we are, we're seeing prices trading on things like Facebook groups and collector groups in the 17s to 18s, and retail dealer pricing $19,000 for the black dial, $20,000 for unworn white dial. The white dial's always been a little bit more popular, but now we're seeing numbers that are really unprecedented, at least we thought would be unprecedented. So once again, really tied to these equity markets and what's going on with the world, but Daytona's at these prices and we're seeing them get snatched up right away. Now let me explain what I mean by that. Now with the Daytona, as well as two Patek Philippe watches that I'm going to talk about, there's an interesting phenomenon that I'm observing. And what's going on is you have these watches that have been kind of stockpiled. So these next two Pateks, I'll tell you just for a little bit of foreshadowing so this makes more sense. We have the Aquanaut 5167A stainless steel as well as 5711A blue dial Nautilus. What's happening is you have a lot of dealers and a lot of people that have bought these watches, they've purchased them to speculate, or they just bought them up knowing that the watch market for these three watches was just so hot that they couldn't possibly lose. And so you have that pool of dealers or collector dealers or speculators that are staying pretty true to their number because they're making the gamble or really the bet that that pricing is going to come back up eventually, in which case they will not have to take a loss. And they don't have to take a loss, otherwise they would dump them. And there are some people that are dumping these watches, people that short-term speculators that thought they could make a few grand, or people that really didn't want them in their collection, but it was hot, they wanted to impress people. And you know, when we're talking about luxury goods, there are some people that purchase them for that and are not the biggest watch savants or go on YouTube like us and talk about watches in our free time. So these watches, you see some, especially the Daytonas, the $17,000 mark that I mentioned. You're going to see one pop up and someone's going to snipe it right away because it's a great deal for that person that was going to buy it anyway. But you're not going to see the whole market, I think. But even giving the examples that I give here, there's more than a handful of these Daytonas out there. And so time will tell. But I think when we move into something like this next one, the 5167A stainless steel Aquanaut, these watches just flew through the roof when the Nautilus started becoming almost unobtainable, even in the secondhand market for quite literally anyone. These got all the way up to nearly $40,000, like new condition, pre-owned, high-level mint. But now I'm seeing some of these at 29, some of these, if you hunt around a little bit, getting just below that. And once again, a watch that was so high, you see some of the market still staying stuck and fixed on their top of the market pricing, but some people that need to get out of it, really setting a second level almost of market pricing where you have a floating market and a fixed market. In the floating market, they're dumping, and those that would love to get an Aquanaut at $29,000, keep your sights out there. Go to the Watch Forum tool that I like to use called Watch Recon. You can set alerts out there. Watch Recon, you search for the model and you can have it let you know when there's a new forum posting that comes up, and you can snipe it right away if you're looking for this watch. And same goes for the 5711A, the stainless steel blue dial Nautilus, arguably the most sought after, hottest in-demand watch even out there in this current market, but certainly progressingly so over the last few years. These were at like $65,000 to $68,000, sometimes even more. We start talking about seal, double seal, you know, sky's the limit kind of pricing. But what we see now is some examples floating around there at 52. I mean, 52 to 65, that's a huge difference there. And once again, the reasoning is there are people out there that are not willing to take a loss, and they don't need the money for anything, so they're not going to dump. And you see this trend, you see this phenomenon in the equities markets as well. You have, you know, companies like Berkshire Hathaway that doesn't need to dump all their stock, even though they got rid of, I think, down to, I think they probably got rid of 20% of their holdings in Delta today. And so sometimes you'll see some of that play over into the watch market. But generally speaking, those that are in it long-term, or long-term collectors, or long-term dealers that are comfortable holding all of these watches for such a long period of time, I don't think you'll see it. Things would have to get very, very, very bad for those kind of stockpile type dealers to start dumping the watches. But maybe here or there, or selling them to other dealers, you never know. Nonetheless, keep your sights out there, and if you are looking for any of those watches, I think it's a really great time to take advantage of some of the volatility. And I will say that our model at Del Rey Watch is a little bit different. We don't keep watches in stock very long. And also, we're not stocking 5711As. We do them on a call. If someone's looking for one, we'd be glad to source one and find one and, make very little on it, but just enough so that we can help out a collector and also move things along. But we're not stockpiling 5711s. We're not stockpiling Daytonas. And you see the people that did do that right now are sweating in their bed quite literally every night. Now I'll touch on vintage. Now, if you're familiar with vintage or almost really transitional, you have the 16710, the GMT Master, you've got the Pepsi bezel, the red and blue, you've got the Coke bezel, the black and red, and you have the black bezel as well. These watches now are kind of the new retail is $8,500, just north of that maybe. And then if you're looking, once again, you're looking on the forums, you might be looking on a quick eBay snag, a buy it now price, or you might be looking elsewhere, private sales communities on Facebook groups, things like that. You can get them a little bit lower than that. 85 is generally the new retail, and we're talking a matter of months ago, 10K plus for a Pepsi bezel 16710 or 16700. And so we're talking about a considerable difference. And so what we saw is that one just took off in price, and now it's kind of come back down. I think this one might also continue to go down as well, because I see a lot of people were speculating on this. A lot of people added this watch in their collection and didn't really want it, but it was a Pepsi bezel, it was hot, it was in. Now they're letting it go, and that's kind of an anomaly in the vintage world. Typically, when we talk about vintage watches, collectors really know what they want. Even when I wear my vintage Rolex, I knew exactly what I want with my vintage watches. Vintage watch collectors, they know what they want, generally speaking. Talking about a 5513 right now, a vintage Submariner, you can get those out there for $9,000, $8,000, just depending. Whereas a couple months ago, we were talking 9, 10, 11, 12, up to 14, just depending on the condition, how well the tritium has aged, so on and so forth. And so vintage watches, it's getting a little bit different. But generally speaking, people really know what they're looking for. So when you get into ultra high-end vintage, we're not seeing any movement in price on that. Almost the opposite, almost maybe even going up a little bit, just because there truly is a limited production. But these almost getting into vintage, these transitional models, they have pulled back, and we'll see what happens there. So what do you guys think about this? Do any of you have any of these watches in your collection? Or have you already taken advantage of this volatile equities market and economies, world economy, to get yourself a cool new watch? If you can do so, I would love to hear it in the comments below. And guys, once again, I would really appreciate it if you checked out my other channel, John P. Like and subscribe. It really would mean a lot. And also, I'd like to mold that channel into whatever you'd like to see. Put some videos about Del Rey Watch there, some behind the scenes things about business in the watch world or the tech business that I do, or anything else. And yeah, everybody out there, be well, be safe, and we'll see you next time. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.